All right, well, we're back here on One Leg Up Alex Network, and with us again from Above and Beyond with you is Jenna Udenberg. And Jenna, it's a very special month. I keyed it off last week, but I want to develop the conversation about Disability Employment Awareness Month, and I understand Above and Beyond with you is involved with that as well this month.
Yeah, we're just trying to increase the awareness, kind of have a campaign going of sharing the work of others, which is super important in what we're doing. And then have some other speaking engagements that are kind of tied into it, but we're definitely making it all a part of the process and the awareness.
All right, I have to ask you this because you're an entrepreneur, right? You built all this up basically from the ground up.
Right.
I feel like that's part of the employment awareness in this is you can build your own brand, right?
Right. And I think it's really important that, like, yes, letting that be known out there, like, we can create the space that we need, and there should be opportunities in the standard industries for us to also function and have the employment that we are seeking.
Well, the DOL does say we have a 2 point, uptick from last year in hiring, which is pretty good from 40 to 42%. But where can we improve on that? I mean, we want to have more than 50% hired, right?
Right. That's, I think it's just continuing to have those conversations. And for those of us that, feel confident in sharing our story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just really being in those boardrooms, the more that disability community and culture is represented in all facets of life, the
Mm-hmm.
more it's just going to become a natural part of everything instead of, the history of our country and of the world, really,
Mm-hmm.
segregating and separating and all those horrific things, and making sure we don't go back to that, right? Like, continue
Right.
that forward motion, continuing having difficult conversations, curious conversations, and more importantly, like, then what? So I think sometimes it's so hard with awareness campaigns because it's like, yeah, we're bringing this forward, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but what's the policy change? What's the procedure change? What's the hiring changes?
We're bringing this forward, then the conversation just kind of stops. I agree with you there. Like, let's say on July 26th, right, with ADA Day, that's where the conversation is. Then did we hear anything else after that, even from the politicians? Not
Right.
really. That's where you and others step in and say, no, we're going to continue that conversation.
Right. And sometimes you always feel like you're that squeaky wheel or the fish swimming upstream, right? So
Mm-hmm.
making sure we're always encouraging those folks that are doing this work and are being that mouthpiece. But also that, you know, um, we also make sure that we are bringing everyone along with us, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
just Jenna's story that's being shared. It's not just Alex's story that's being shared, but it's everybody, whether they're new friends, yet to be friends, or, people we've known for a long time. And I think the biggest thing for a lot of folks is just remembering that anybody can acquire their disability at any moment. And so we are the most diverse minority group out there. And so I'm excited for the more that we become connected,
Mm-hmm.
the more that we keep speaking up, the more that we create community within our community,
Sure.
because the sky's the limit, right? So,
Well, and I know last time we talked was about transportation for you. How's
mm,
those goals been since we last talked?
yeah, I mean, in the current situation that our federal government finds itself, almost all projects have stopped. So that's very unfortunate. But I keep still having those conversations. And I'm connecting with other disability activists throughout the country. So it was awesome being a part of Nico's um, Disability Pride Month activity video segment stuff that he did out in Philadelphia, and following him. And so I think just the more that we can be encouraged, and I felt bad with the whole, like, don't drive your car week last week and all the things. I'm
Huh.
like, well, in rural Minnesota, yeah, I kind of got to use my van. Like, so I would
Now
love to
you
do,
drive, or do you drive the van
yeah,
yourself? Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
So many people have adaptive cars, and I think that's another thing to bring awareness about. If you're afraid to drive, you can get your car adapted. Do you think there's not enough
yeah,
awareness about that?
for sure. And I also think it's a financial burden, right? And so, I've been very privileged to, have the career that I've had, being a music educator, getting my master's, all those things that I know not everyone is afforded. Um, And having a supportive family, my dad helped me with many of my first cars and down payments and all the things because we just can't collect that much. And then also because
Mhm.
I get PCA services and caddy waiver and all those different things, with asset limits and all the stuff, right? So there's so many different parts to navigate on the financial front. to make that happen. And so it's interesting because in Minnesota, we have a great company. And one of their owners was like, all right, Jenna, your van is about 10 years old. Have you considered a trade-in? And it's like, no, I've never been able to do that. It's been like a run into the ground, type of situation. And I was like, oh, well, this is a way for me also to continue to give back to my community because, it's still a great van. It still does all the things. And I'm sure someone else could, beat it into the ground.
Sure.
And have some reliable transportation. So I'm hoping to be able to do that this, spring as I take care of different things. But again, who knows what's going to happen at the federal level and all the stuff. So
It's interesting to talk about transportation. It's October, which means Minnesota's going to get a very. Is it a plan for an early winter, or what's the plan up there for weather wise?
well, last week on this day, it was 80 degrees on Lake Superior.
Wow.
Today it was 43.
So it's gonna change, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you're ready for that as an experienced Minnesotan. But no, my point being is that how do you adjust? I mean, you talked about it a little bit last time, but for those just tuning in for the first time, how do you
Right.
adjust to that as someone who drives an adaptive van, and then you got to deal with the snow and the everything about Minnesota weather.
Yeah, and it it is no small feat for sure. Um, I do a lot of awareness campaigns and a lot of connections with um local agencies and businesses and, all of that whole sector because it's like your snow removal policy and plan can't be like, oh, we only clean it when there's 4 inches.
Right.
Like access aisles, sidewalks, getting in and out, all the things need to be, taken care of. And to be honest, a lot of times I just take a different approach to winter. Like summer and in northern Minnesota, we don't get a lot of fall and we don't get a lot of spring. We're kind of
Mhm.
extremists up here. And in the weather, that is.
Hey,
Just to clarify.
that's funny. Jenna, and by the way, you are bipartisan. You do work with both sides of the aisle, which is very important to note because,
Yeah.
it's good to know that you have both sides' ears, if you will. But you
Yep.
know what I realized? We're going to post this on YouTube, and we didn't do that the last time. So
Oh.
give my audience who's seeing this for the first time an insight into beyond, above and beyond with you.
Yeah, so we are a nonprofit located up in northern Minnesota on beautiful Lake Superior. Our tagline is that we are to increase accessibility and inclusion along the North Shore and beyond. And so we've been in existence for 3 years, and our goal is to not just raise awareness, but really come alongside entities, agencies, individuals, small businesses, large businesses. And the whole meaning of above and beyond with you is above and beyond stands for that ADA code is just the floor. It is not the ceiling. So we can go above and beyond. And in that, disability, culture, and community should be represented as stakeholders, and their voice should be heard and respected and actually acted upon. And the with you is a nod to our board. Almost all of our board members have some connection to education. I am a former music teacher. And
That's
so
right.
the with is not just like, hey, just hire us for a consultation and call it good. Nope, we want
And
to see.
specifically the U because it's Udenberg. So, it all
Right.
works. Now, as you mentioned that, I remember now our first conversation, I was really hammering home the point that we don't have to sue every business that isn't accessible. We have to work with them instead of sue them, right?
Right. Yeah, the system is just so messed up in the way that it's situated, with ADA being the greatest unfunded mandate of the American federal government. But yeah, you can get in my experience, you can get way more action and traction with honey than with vinegar. And at some point, sometimes you do have to throw the vinegar to clean some things up and to, handle things professionally and business-like. But I'd much rather have conversations with business owners and figuring out how to raise funds to make things happen and to change their business plan. That's ultimately it, right? Like I get probably requests almost every month or actually almost every week, depending on the season of, hey, above and beyond with you, do you got money for us? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Your business plan needs to also include accessibility, also include accommodations for your disabled workers.
So they want you to
Um,
fund the project, is what you're saying?
right. Or create connections so that they can get the resources and revenue to do what they want to do. And so it's just that educational piece. It's that time of, again, creating that relationship of like, yeah, we don't have all this money. I would love to, like, that's my ultimate dream, right? To
Sure.
be like, let's do some 50-50 match grants. Let's do this work together. But we're just not there yet, but
I
hopefully
don't know if
soon.
I asked you this last time, but the conversion rate, have you been able to convert businesses into ADA through this, you know, through this business? How many businesses have been converted into ADA accessibility through you?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, we need to track that data. um, and a lot of it has been more like, hey, great, you're here, but now have you thought about this population of disability? Or, hey, you built the ramp last year before we even were connected, but now let's talk about your parking. Or,
Yeah,
yay, you got us in the door, but now I can't use your restroom. So, I think a lot of it is just that we're still in the journey. So I
baby
don't,
steps. Yeah,
right. So I don't know that I could say like, hey, this has the above and beyond with you stamp because it's 100%. And you and I know that nothing's 100% because we're
sure.
all uniquely created and uniquely needing accommodations. So,
And I want to give people a geographical kind of difference here because New York has all these buildings which should be ADA. I mean, we're New York City. Sometimes they're
right.
not. But I imagine rural Minnesota and Minnesota has a lot more older buildings. So how do you work on making sure the older buildings are ADA? Because I've
Yeah.
seen resistance to the older buildings wanting to be coded, if that makes sense. They don't know how they can do it, so
Mhm.
they kind of just don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in my small town, generally, I think we have like 5 or 6 hair salons and barber shops, and I can physically get in 2. One that was built in the last 5 years and on ground level, and one that had a ramp put onto it, early on. But thankfully, they have the space to do a 1 to 12 or a 1 to 20 ramp. But so many are in buildings that were created in the 1950s or even earlier. And a lot of it comes down to, you know, what are all the other codes? And that's what I always ask when I'm with city and county and state officials, like what code trumps a different code?
Mm,
Is it the water runoff that determines the slope of the sidewalk, but then you forget about ADA? Or you know what I
mm,
mean? So there's so many things, and then because there's some of the caveats within ADA, oh, we're
right.
grandfathered in. Well, no, you're not. People love to say that, but that's not truly how you read the law.
Wow.
So, I think a lot of it is like I get so tired of having to come at it from the head perspective and from the financial perspective. It's like you have to get people at the heart of it. When
Uh,
they think of your business of XYZ, do they want to think that you're only catering to non-disabled people or white people or affluent
mm,
people or you know what I mean? Like
sure.
what are you truly putting out as your front face and what do you really mean for that front face to be?
And for those who may not know your story, because we only did the audio portion last time, tell us who
Right.
Jenna Udenberg is.
Ooh, good question. I am a passionate community leader. I have been blessed with being a Blandon community leader member, which is a local foundation up here in northern Minnesota. I am a 2020 Bush Fellow, and I'm also a 2025 Shannon Leadership Institute cohort member. And so, finding that voice, finding my story. I'm a published author. Within My Spokes is my memoir that all proceeds go straight to my work with Above and Beyond with You. And I also write a column called Local View from 4 Foot 2 that you can find on our website, aboveandbeyondwithyou.org. It's published in our local paper, the Lake County Press. And so, when I'm not doing all these things, I'm hanging out with friends. I am enjoying local coffee shops. I am playing board games and card games, and I'm out on my Rio Mobility Firefly on any paved or gravel trail that lets me be me with my friends and other cyclists and bicyclists. So, me in a nutshell, I'm also a retired music teacher, 19-year career that got ended kind of abruptly during the COVID-19 pandemic because my school district wasn't interested in accommodating my work from home orders. So, lots of pivoting within my career and pivoting into the nonprofit world. And during my free time, haha, I
Uh-huh.
also coach the Lego robotics team, the Robo Dweebs. And so
Yes, you love
it's,
the robots. Yes, the robotics. That's right. We'll get to that
yeah.
in a minute as well, and the Lego thing as well. But I also I brought you on because we did not get a chance to talk about ADA Day 2025.
Mm.
What did you guys do at Above and Beyond with you? Were there? I know you mentioned you were in a reel of sorts, but tell us how you guys made your mark this ADA 2035. I can't believe it's 35 years already.
Right. Um, we went and supported a local disability pride day that happened regionally. And that's really cool because that has only been in existence. I think this was their second, maybe third
Hmm.
year. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, just a month of just uplifting other voices and making sure that, people that follow us, other also follow other content creators, awareness people, and the activists that are really doing the hard work. So, um, yeah, it feels like forever ago with how much
Yeah,
change has happened, right?
I know. Well, and I was going to ask you this. So obviously we're now in the shutdown, and I feel like
Yeah.
where a group above and beyond with you can come in about accessibility is navigating now this fear that Medicaid and all this stuff is shut down. Are you getting a lot of calls about this right now?
We aren't getting those kinds of calls because that's not necessarily our wheelhouse of things. Maybe people sharing their frustration or their concern. And when we do, get maybe questions of like what are reliable resources, of course we share that, based on region and county and all the stuff. Um, and yet, me and my president, we're both disabled. So we also are making sure that we're taking self-care time and that we're
Mm,
actually taking care of ourselves too, because this is it's hard to live
mm.
it for yourself, live it with and for others, and, just stay positive in this whole process.
Yeah, but I think you do a good job of that, and obviously you're a guest everywhere, which is great. And we of course met through Podmatch. Have you been connecting more through there as well?
Yeah, I actually went through a medical leave for a little bit. I had to have a new knee replacement in July, so I had to take a couple months off. But now I'm definitely back, and I'm going, wow, I need to like figure out how to balance all this stuff because I love, having these conversations, getting to know more of the hosts and the different shows and that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, Podmatch has definitely been an amazing tool and an amazing group of folks that are really all about spreading the message and bringing awareness.
I don't know if you know the Accessible Stall, but they're also in this space of podcasts. I got to connect you with them because of my
Oh,
childhood friend since kindergarten runs this show
nice.
with someone who's doing editing work for the Able newspaper here in New York. So I got to connect you guys,
Oh,
and
cool.
that's what I'm doing. And I connect with you, Eric of Tripper, because I'm like accessibility, transportation, boom, So
Right. Yeah.
and I hope that one has been growing as well. Um, but you also said something interesting last week when I pitched you the idea to come on, and you said, "Yeah, we have counselors that can help you out find jobs." And I feel like that's an arm that doesn't exist everywhere. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be more of that kind of
Right.
outreach, and maybe you're breaking ground with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we are necessarily. That's the career of my president of Above and Beyond with You. So she's done a lot of disability benefits counseling for probably the last 2 decades of her world. Started out in the outdoor camp recreation world and then came into the benefits world. So she is definitely my go-to person for myself and for others. Um, but I feel like that maybe is an area that needs way more
Well, I think we need to also
representation.
encourage people to get up and work. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is sometimes they're afraid. And look, the other fear is,
Right.
well, I'm on benefits. Yet, how can I work also so I don't lose the benefits? And it's tough to
Right.
be capped at a certain amount you can make a month with the fear
Hmm.
of losing your benefits. Is there legislation? Is there activism? Is there, advocacy that can be done to fix that?
Yes, and right. It's getting connected to those legislative activists, the lobbyists, and then figuring out like what is a state issue and what is a federal issue, what is a local issue. And I think the hard part is like you never bring all the entities together. So, SSDI makes one call, Medicare or health insurances make another call, caddy waivers and county level services make a different call. So it's just frustrating when you're stuck between all the different systems. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, I have to take care of my health or my medical conditions, or I just need to like live a healthy life. So I get the frustration. And yet sometimes it's so hard because it feels like not everybody has the same access to the resources, or you have to like find this magical beginning of your choose your own adventure instead of like, hey, everyone who identifies as disabled or has these conditions that, need accommodations, here's all the information you ever need to know in all of the different connectivities to make it happen. And so I think that's a part of our frustration as well. Like even last night, I was talking with somebody about, local housing. practices. And I'm like, okay, so when does Above and Beyond with You get to come and talk with this new upcoming hotel? When do we get to come and talk with the people that are creating this new housing project? And they're like, oh, we need to figure out this project management style. Cause I'm like, right, we're
Time to
always
hire a
brought
few
in.
architects too in the process, I guess, right?
Right. And then what I've noticed in the last 3 years of doing this work too is like you can be at the beginning of the idea. You can meet with the architects, and the architects can be amazing. You can meet with the contractors and they can be amazing. But what I found is it's that last paid, least paid, contracted, nobody's around on the last Friday of the day before a holiday weekend. And that one choice that that laborer makes in where they put the bars or where they put
Mm.
dispensers or where they do whatever made all this work from the very beginning completely null and void because of that one choice. So it's just figuring out the workflows of all the different ways in which we create spaces and we maintain spaces and we retrofit spaces to
Oh
make
yeah.
sure we're always thinking about accessibility. So,
Now here in New York, we're always building new things. I feel like everything there's construction sites all over. Is do you see
right.
that in Minnesota that there are up and coming construction progress projects that we may not know about that we can support maybe in the ADA space?
I would say like yes, more in our metro area. Rural takes a lot longer to get new things. Like I currently live in one of the newest high rises that was built in 1968.
Wow. You know what's
So, yeah.
what's cool about your role though is you are advocacy, you're activist because you deal with the legislation part of it, but then you're also a consultant. Do you consider yourself a consultant as well? I feel like you have that title, you know?
Yeah. And that's where I love being making those relationships, right? That's where I love flipping the script. That's where I love seeing those aha moments. So it's that teacher in me that's like, yes, that's why I'm an accessibility educator. Let's have these conversations. And also as somebody who's been in a wheelchair for 38 years since age 8, it's like there's really nothing that you're going to ask trying to be inclusive or trying to be politically correct that's going to throw me off because when you've done this for so long, it's like, yep, let's talk about the language you used.
Well, and maybe people listen to our first conversation, but I'm going to repeat some of the questions I remember now.
Yeah.
You were diagnosed with juvenile arthritis as a kid. I mean, 8 years old. And I
Hmm.
remember asking you, and I'm doing this for the YouTube because they may not have seen this, heard this before. But
Right.
you're an 8 year old. You're jumping around, right? You're vibrant. And then,
Hmm.
did it feel like the world stopped for you, and then you had to really adapt? What was that moment like?
Yeah, a lot of my memories have kind of been washed away in a good way, right? In
That's
a
a good
in a
way.
healthy, healing way. But yeah, life was very different. I mean, I was this tomboy that went hunting and fishing and doing all the outdoor things with my dad and brother and grandpa and all this stuff. And then life really turned medical. And then my
Mm-hmm.
life turned really like into adults. Like I would say, 1-to-one when you have different paras in the school setting, and then you go to PTs and OTs and doctors
Mm-hmm.
and nurses and people with sharp objects and doing all the torturous things to you in the medical world. It just shapes you differently. And so I've always said that I'm very thankful that I acquired my disability at a young age because I didn't know any different. I mean, you've only lived so much life by age 7 or 8, right? So
Sure.
then everything else has been shaped. Um, and
And you also
even,
have a strong faith in God. I think we talked about that last time. So I know that that has gotten you through a lot of these last 30 plus years now.
yeah, absolutely. Like, and I've gone through depressions. I've gone through, really hard stuff. And yeah, for me, it's been my faith that's always brought me back and my chosen family, plus my biological family, of course. But the larger the support system one can have, the better off in the long run you can, hopefully be supported and get to
Sure.
those healthy spots.
I'm going to
So,
ask you this, though, because I feel like were there signs? Because I only asked this, maybe people who have kids at that age now, and like,
mm.
are there signs people have to look out for?
Yes and no. Like my story is we were out skating and supposedly I fell. And so then that's when my knee was twice the size in the bathtub the next morning. So a lot of times it comes down to swelling, it comes down to heat. Some versions of JIA have rashes. So there's lots of different ways that arthritis can be triggered in kids, and I believe you can be all the way up to like age 30, and you can still be considered to have juvenile at your onset age. So it's just interesting. And like another podcaster last week was like, so juvenile. I'm like, yeah, the doctors tried to take away that name like 8 years ago. And I was like, no, in the medical world, you need to see like, yes, Jenna's 45 right now, but Jenna's been dealing with this for 38 years, not just like, oh, she got it at age 42. This is 3 years of a disease cycle. So always advocating, always fighting for yourself and for your rights and to make sure that people are knowing all of Jenna, not just individual parts of Jenna.
And of course, as I'm talking about healthcare, I'm thinking about healthcare. Do you
Mhm.
hope to have more tentacles, if you will, right? Like you're going to deal with healthcare advocacy, then you're going to deal with
Mhm.
transportation and accessibility, and then all these tentacles will lead to a force of nature in the 8A community. Do you ever think like that?
Yeah, I try to break into the medical world, especially locally, right? Like think globally, act locally. And I've had so many just near really bad calls in different situations by well-intending providers and well-intending, x-ray techs and that kind of stuff. But then in the same respect, I always like bring it back, like when I go get x-rays, especially for my lower limbs, they're always like, "Oh, it's a standing x-ray. Can you stand?" And I'm like, well, yes and no, right? And so then I'm always advocating, like, hey, yep, I've been doing this for 38 years. But if you have somebody who comes in as a newly diagnosed person or a new injury, that would be horrific to them and their recovery to say, hey, you need to stand for this x-ray. So there's just so much
It would
education
almost be cruelty, actually, but
oh, for sure, right? And so I'm just like, can we not do that? Like I don't know. So there just has to be so much more education and opportunities. And I understand it from the other side, especially as being an educator, right? Like we don't know what we don't know, but then once we know, we need to do better. But if you don't have a safe place for you to practice and know that you're going to make mistakes, because that's a whole educational cycle, like you don't just fall asleep one night and go, "Ooh, I'm never going to say a bad thing ever again."
right.
Right? We're human. We're going to
You
make mistakes.
you have me intrigued right now because music. You're obviously going to play instruments.
Mhm.
Uh, what instrument did you like to play growing up? How'd you get into the music world? Music therapy world, and then or music teaching world, I should say.
Yeah.
And then, as the years went on, did you find playing you had to adapt to the way you played because of the arthritis? Was there something there with that?
Yeah, for sure. So my first love is trumpet playing, and my oldest sister played the cornet, which is like a smaller version of a trumpet. So my other sister played the flute, and that was just too girly for me, too small, too delicate, not my bag. And so I had an amazing middle school band teacher, and she really inspired me because she saw me as a whole person. She inspired me to become that. And so that's sort of my journey of becoming a music educator. And for me, when I was the lead trumpet player of the high school jazz band and of concert band and all that stuff, like that's where I found my voice. That was my even playing field with my non-disabled peers. That was also a great healing space for me because when I was in a lot of pain, it was like, this sucks. And just playing higher and faster and louder and doing all the things. And then when I became a music educator, my greatest part of my career was starting an adaptive music program. Like, let's give all of our students equal access, which means some of our kiddos need, the ability of visual schedules. And then I brought that into my general ed classroom. And so then having non-disabled kiddos using that tool, that device, was like, oh, and it took away the anxiety of other
Uh-huh.
kiddos. Like, so you don't have to be on an IEP or a 504 or have this diagnosis to benefit from accommodations that other people who really need those things. And so that's my biggest thing now. And I love disability
And
community
have
and
you? I think you mentioned the adaptive music before. Have you implemented that program elsewhere? Have you been able to do that through Above and Beyond with you, or even in your own side hustle, if you will?
No, not yet. I actually got a speaking engagement last month around that, which shocked me because I haven't done it in 5 years of my
Mm.
retirement. But reconnecting with a speech language pathologist that I teamed with and the rest of the team, they're like, we need to revive this because now they've had, different retirements and different staff and all the stuff. So that's just the hardest part, like when staff is changing, administration is changing, and throughout all of disability history, right? We get the activists, Alex is doing the podcast thing, Jenna's doing above and beyond with you thing, and then it's like, oh, well, now Alex or Jenna got sick, or Alex or Jenna have
Mm.
XYZ, and then it's like, our work stops. And that's been my thing since day one with Above and Beyond with You is like, I want the movers and shakers. I want the educating part of it. I want the people that are going to continue this on because it's not about Jenna.
Right.
It's
It's
about
a
our
bigger
community.
mission.
It's
Exactly.
right. And so whether I get taken out because I have to have a knee replaced, or whether I get taken out because it's just not my season to be a part of it anymore, or I get literally taken out forever, like the work still should move forward. And that's what I'm trying to create and trying to always make sure we're there. And like you said earlier, with all the different tentacles, like that's the hard part is like there's so much education to do. There's
Hmm.
so much change that needs to happen. And yet finding those spaces where your energy is being used and people are actually coming at it in the right time in
Hmm.
the right way. And so, a lot of my friends are always like, wow, you're like killing yourself over this. And it's like, well, right. But if a business comes to us and says, hey, I have this money right now with this initiative, I have to throw, I have to make time and make space for that
Yeah.
because I can't be like, well, let me look at my calendar. Oh, in 6 months on this Wednesday for this
Yeah.
one
Right.
hour, I'll get to you, So
Is
that's a struggle.
any project too daunting? Do you ever look at this and say, "Oh my God, I don't know if this is possible," or do you look at it as any building can be fixed up? I mean, what's your approach to all of that?
Yeah. Um, I would say double yes, right? Like I try not to let it out of my face because it's not my voice that usually gives it away. It's always my face of like, that is daunting, that is overwhelming, not sure we're going to be able to get there, right? Um, but I'm always confident that we can think outside the box. But so often we just get lip service. Oh yeah, this would be great. And then they dream big and they want big, but
But
then
then when they
comes
put the money
the
where the mouth is, it doesn't happen.
reality.
I get it.
Right. Yeah. And so then that's the struggle of like, do you let them dream big? Do you let them see how inclusive and accessible the world truly can be? Or do you realistically come in? And I don't ever want to be that wet blanket because it's like, no. But then there's so many broken scripts that are out there that we're trying to fight of, well, it's more expensive. Well,
Mm.
yes, in some ways, but not really, because retrofitting is more expensive. Losing the income or the revenue that you'd be getting as a small business because you're not accessible or you don't have accessible
Mhm.
parking or you don't have accessible point of
And that's
sale.
a great point. They don't realize that not being accessible shuts out a whole sector of people that will benefit their business. And then,
Yeah.
you know, I find we are a community, right? So the more people that use a business, they're going to just say to
Mhm.
their friends, "Hey, come on in." It just naturally works like that. And it's
Yep.
funny you mentioned because I was in a bit, not in a fight, but I had seen that they wanted $1 million to fix up or do something with the Met Opera elevator, right?
Oh.
$1 million.
Hmm.
And I said, this is tough because I want the place to be ADA accessible, but do I want $1 million of of the government, or should the private sector, should the Met Opera do this on their own, right? But in that sense,
Right.
I do think if they don't have the capital, they should lean on the government in that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be some magical equation,
Mm-hmm.
some better way to go through this to fund things. Um, And like I said, it's all those negative scripts of how we should or shouldn't do this. Or another new one that came to us a couple months ago was, well, I know that sometimes if you make it better for this segment of disability, culture, and community, then you're inhibiting that segment. And I loved it because my president was like, well, not if you do it right.
Right.
Not if you use universal design, not if you involve the people that are being
Case
impacted
in
by
point,
it.
right? So the garden is accessible. And Madison Square Garden is pretty accessible, I think. They have a nice
Mm,
section. But then they took it a step further and said, we're going to give sensory,
mm,
devices for people who need that sensory as well. And I thought that was a great inclusionary movement right there, is to put the sensory
yep.
devices in. And that just adds another layer to their accessibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality, like, I'm not being ageist or anything like that, but I'm so intrigued to continue to watch the baby boomers as they age because disability
Mm.
is just a natural process of life as well. Doesn't always have to be catastrophic things that happen or tragic, even though I don't like using those words. But, you know, um, And so it's just intriguing because it's like, oh, and I've even gotten some flack like, hey, so and so is a baby boomer and they just became disabled like last month, but look at all the cool things they're doing at Target Center and they're doing at Excel Energy and they're making happen at
Mhm.
the Vikings football stadium. What's wrong with you, Jenna? You've been doing this for 38 years. How come you're not? And it's like, well, I've been doing this for 38 years and I haven't been to those spaces. So number one, that's part of why I didn't do
I mean, why aren't you
that
involved with the
work.
Twins, the Vikings, the Wolves, in other words?
Right, like why didn't you go after these big places? And it was like that's not my calling and my chapter, and that's
No, the whole point is the
cool.
small businesses, and that's what needs to be improved more because
Right.
the bigger projects will handle themselves. Like that's just they have the capital firstly to do that. They can do that. But when you talk about
Right.
mom and pop stores, it
Yeah.
also could alleviate the fear that they're going to be sued. I hate to go back to that, but that's just how it feels. Like if you're working alongside the small businesses, then they'll
Yeah.
feel a little more comfortable. Hey, we have an ally here.
Hmm.
We have someone that gets it, and not just someone that says, "Well, I'm going to go to 20,000 different places, make all the points as
Right.
inaccessible, and sue them." Like I don't know. It bothers
No.
me to no end that the ADA gets weaponized like that. But I think you're changing
Yeah.
the tune on that. Now, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, all right, so let's say a project gets on the ground, going off the ground, I should say,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you're looking for outside architects, contractor. How does that work? Do you have people on standby that say, yes, we'll come in and fix this building right away?
I wish. That's our goal. We do have some connections to local contractors that have done amazing work, like in our public library and our small town of less than 4,000 people is the first community to have a public adjustable adult changing table. And I was like, our bigger, larger city that has like 80,000 people 26 miles away from us doesn't even have one anywhere. It's like, oh, but our little town of 3,800 has this accommodation and this thought process. So it's some of those little things that I love being a part of those things and then blowing other people's minds. Like,
And
oh,
I'm
well,
thinking
if you
once you
need
start
this,
locally, it becomes a national campaign after that, right? You got to start local, and then it branches out.
right.
Because I think you just said you have seen different states sort of interacting with you about this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and for all of us to just learn from other ones, right? And especially if you can get that like state to state rivalry,
Uh huh.
us in the Midwest, we have that. I'm sure you have it on the East Coast too, but it's like Minnesota
Like,
does
can New
not
York be
like.
more accessible than Massachusetts? Kind of stuff right there. So I
Right.
like that.
Don't tell Minnesota that Wisconsin's doing something better or Iowa's doing something better. It's like, wait, what?
How about
So,
airplane travel? Have you been working in that space yet, like to make sure that can be more accessible, or is that not there yet?
we support like Wheels Up Media and or Wheels Up, can't remember the next word of their organization. And like some of those campaigns that other entities do. I myself have never flown because of chairs getting, over 100 chairs getting destroyed every day.
Oh, I saw it firsthand. My ex and I went to Texas, and they came back. We came back. The chair
Mm,
was just all mangled, and it was like, what the heck? And it's almost
yeah.
like they just throw these things down the ramp and not give a crap about it. So,
Oh yeah, you can watch on YouTube with, chairs not having brakes on and people just chucking them. And it's like, really? I'm in an $8,000 manual chair from Canada that I had to wait months and months for to get through customs. So let's not do that. Yeah, and so, I follow people like Curb Free with Corey Lee and Spin the
yeah.
Globe, like, and I
Yep.
support and, lift up their voice and their work a lot. And I think that's good, right? Because we can't be everything to everyone. So we kind of have to find our niche of like, where are we being called? Where are we passionate? Where are we being successful? And then, not try to fight every single fight because you're not gonna you're not gonna make enough headway. So finding those spaces where you're truly passionate, you've got the support, you have the allies, and just keep doing the thing,
All right. I think this all ties into the Employment Awareness Month, which is where we started, because the
right?
more accessible people find it, the more they're going to want to apply to jobs, knowing the workspace is accessible. So that's
Yep.
got to be the next step. Also, is okay. Job, you say you want to hire disabled people because of EEO, equal opportunity employer,
Mhm.
then put your money where your mouth is and make it accessible. Make it more inviting for someone to apply. Is that another issue we're running into too?
Oh, for sure. And I think a lot of times people only think of people coming into their establishment. You don't think
Mm-hmm.
of somebody behind your point of sale. You don't think of the bar needing to be accessible for your bartender. Or they think, well, none of my people are disabled. It's like statistically, I know every single business will have at least one, unless it's mom and pop and they're not disabled. But any more workers when 1 in 4 Americans, identify as disabled. Well, that also means that there's way more than that because not everybody wants to identify as disabled because it's such a negative stigma. And then even if they do identify, many times you're not going to tell your employer. I had to
Right.
because here I come wheeling in your space. They knew that. But I also know very well that I probably wouldn't have gotten my first public school job had that person not advocated for me because I was the best option of the people that
Right.
they, interviewed. But I knew that administration would be looking and going, oh, but with Jenna comes all these other things. What if we went with so and so? They don't have all these other things. It's like, well, they do. They're just not obvious. Because
Right.
all humans come with stuff, right?
That's true. That's very true.
So,
Well, I'm glad that you're taking what you did in the classroom and expanding it into this national. Almost, I mean, I know you're thinking local, but it's also becoming national because you've been on so many shows already. It's like becoming a national movement you got going on. But that's
right.
the next question. Where can people find you guys? And also, is there a newsletter? Do you do webinars? Are there events that you guys put on that we could know about?
Yeah. So aboveandbeyondwithyou.org, and the U is the letter U. And so you can find us on socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
Okay.
I always forget one of them. And you can have access to my book and our consulting opportunities and training opportunities and all that through our website. Also, all the local view from 4 foot 2 columns of this year are getting updated on the website. We are going to be launching the audio version of my book, hopefully later in
Ooh.
October. Just waiting on some audio files to finally convert and do all that kind of stuff, but we'll keep you updated on that. Um, and yes, I totally like my next step. I would love to get into webinars and all the things, but just trying to finish up some bigger projects and finish up some contracts before diving into the next step of Above and Beyond with you.
All right. So you said the book is called Within My Spokes, right? That's the book.
Yep.
I want to ask you that because I feel like what you said a few minutes ago about how you were so excited to show your able-bodied peers, hey, I can do it too. Let me
Yep.
tell you, as an adaptive athlete and someone who's competitive like that and all that,
Mhm.
I love showing able-bodied people we can kick ass as well. I don't know. I feel like we're on the same wavelength there.
Right. I always tease one of my PTs. I had a PCA several years ago, and she's like, Jenna's kind of weak. And my PT looked at her and she's like, nope, come here. And it's like, nope, once you're in my little wheelhouse, I could do some damage, but you have to come to where I can get you. But yeah. So, there's a fighting spirit in every
I call
human,
it
I
smashing
think.
stigmas. I think we're all out here every day trying to smash the stigmas. So.
Right? I like
Uh,
that.
all right, Jenna, thank you so much. And you won't believe this, but this whole month, Tripper is sponsoring the show. So we got him on board as a
Nice.
sponsor for Employment Awareness Month. And I just want to give them a shout out today. Of course, trippercorp.net is sponsoring this whole month. Thank you so much. And I love that you guys connected too as well.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, Jenna Udenberg, above and beyond with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alex.
That was perfect.